I don't know what that means. I'm not allowed to do that. I guess that makes me a bad teacher. These are all real quotes that I've heard from teachers who are working with coaches to shift their practices. And these quotes make me think that these teachers are feeling as disengaged from their teaching as our students can be from math. So I want to think about how can coaches and supervisors do a better job talking to teachers about their practice so that they don't end up as disengaged and disaffected as those teachers sound. And I think we can build on the lessons we get from talking to students. So when we work with students on big concepts like sorting triangles, we give them technology like mine that isn't working on this slide right now so that they can manipulate and play around with triangles and explore different shapes, categorize them, sort them, way before we put language to it like isosceles, scaling, equilateral, right? So the concepts belong to the students way before they get fancy names. So how come when I see big concepts introduced to teachers, I see PowerPoint slides that say cognitive demand, and then they have a really long, dry, boring definition of cognitive demand, and then the next thing is, okay, go apply that in your classroom. People don't own those concepts and they're being asked to apply them in their classrooms. And teachers have a lot of really rich experience comparing tasks. So why don't we say to teachers, here are 2 tasks. How would you compare them? How would you sort them? What's the same? What's different? Oh, those things you noticed, that's what researchers call cognitive demand. Now you have a shortcut vocabulary that you can use to talk to each other that names a concept that you already are familiar with and understand and can make sense of and use in your classroom. So just like we do with students, concepts first and vocabulary second. Also, just like we do with students. A student says, okay, 3 times 45, that would be 125. Right, Annie?
Well, Max, I wonder if you could tell me more about how you figured that out.
Well, I did 3 times 40, and that was 120, and then 5. Wait a minute, I should have done 3 times 40 and 3 times 5. So it should be 135. Thanks, Annie. Now I'm really confident that I'm right. Every time Annie talks to kids, she always asks them, how did you know? How did you think about it? How did you figure it out? That's why I could put her in this without pre-rehearsing that at all in advance. All I said is hold the mic during my talk. When she talks to teachers, she doesn't walk into their room and say, you should use more group work, or I love how your desks are arranged in rows. She talks to teachers about their decision making. How did you decide to arrange this desk this way for this activity? That way she's honoring their decisions. She's not saying that was right or that was wrong. Just like she didn't tell me 125 is the wrong answer for that. She said, how did you think about it? Dr. Schoenfeld, when he's working with students, says, anytime I can stop you and say, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How will it help you? When we talk to teachers about their decision making, not just the outcomes of their decisions, we're honoring that metacognitive process. We're helping to bring that back into teaching. When we talk about decision making, not decisions, teachers are empowered, they're valued as thinkers, just like we value our students as thinkers, and they get a chance to be even more metacognitive, even more reflective, which helps them grow as teachers. When we talk to kids about feedback, we know these are not good examples of feedback. We don't go up to a kid and say, hey, nice job, that's all your feedback for today. Sam, you got to do a better job, that's all your feedback for today. We know to give feedback to kids that's specific and it's clear and descriptive about what did or didn't happen based on the action you took to achieve a purpose. That's Grant Wiggins' definition of feedback, and I love it. So when I go into a classroom and I really screw up, like I'm about to do in the next slide, and I'm talking to a bunch of 4th graders who are really excited to be doing math with me, and I say, okay, here's a story. What's your best guess for the answer to this story? And one kid's like 10/12, and another kid's like 1,000,000, and another kid's like -1. And I'm like, okay, great, we did the guessing part of my lesson plan, and now we're going to go right into small groups, and you're all going to do an awesome job. I need to be told, so, when you launched right into the small groups then, did you notice that very few of the students understood the story well enough to make progress? That feedback will help me be like, oh, my action resulted in a response that was less than ideal. And I was up at the front of the room freaking out about my lesson plan, so I didn't actually notice what was happening in the small groups. So feedback that tells me, hey, that decision you made, here's what happens, lets me evaluate for myself. So when the teachers understand the concepts of the shifts because they came from their ideas, when we talk to them about their decision making, not just whether their decisions was good or not, and then we give feedback about the outcomes of those decisions in terms of teacher, it turns, in terms of students, it turns, I don't know what that means, into, hey, that makes sense, not allowed, into here's what I decided to try, and oh, I must be a bad teacher, into this is a strategy that might work for this goal, And if it doesn't, I have something else to try. Thank you.